Hi, welcome to Film Music Mentor. Today's topic, the top 4 misconceptions about music in documentaries. The top 4 misconceptions about music in documentaries. So, the first, my documentary doesn't need a score. It's a documentary. The sound design and the natural sound, that's going to cover it. It's going to make it great. So, it's not true. For the most part, I would say more than 99% of the time, documentaries need music. They need music for a number of reasons. Um, you're stringing together uh, footage that you don't know how it'll turn out. You're creating a Franken movie of sorts, and the music helps structure, helps smooth transitions. It helps bring out and evoke emotions that maybe aren't there because the subject in the documentary isn't a professional actor, and nor do you want them to be. And there may be moments that just need a little emphasis. Another thing happens in documentaries, um, something I've come across, where a person's discussing something that's particularly awful or a personal tragedy, and they're not emotional about it, and they're talking about it matter of factly, and it feels like they're lying. They're not lying. They're just emotionally detached because maybe that's a survival mechanism. But I've seen this and stumbled across this on several occasions where a subtle music bed can make it connects the audience with what they're saying, even though the way the subject in the documentary is delivering it isn't quite conveying what they're saying. So music's really important in that way. So for structure, for transition, for sometimes just bad sound in documentary, it's not something you should immediately say we're not having a music score, because it really is important. Maybe you're going to use a music library or something like that, and that could work. But having a score designed for the subtleties of the documentary, it's a great idea. Second, my documentary is about a musician. I don't need any music. Well, couple of thoughts on that. One, most musicians, especially if they're a pop musician, their music may not actually convey the emotions that you need for your documentary. A lot of these subtler, darker emotions are probably not available in their music catalog. So that's one thing. The other thing, very often, and I've seen this a lot, documentaries about musicians, sometimes they're unauthorized, and the rights to the music of the subject of the documentary isn't available. However, their story and certain footage of them is, because that's public domain, or um, because they're famous, they have less rights to privacy. So I've seen lots of documentaries on musicians that don't have a note of the musician's music. So you shouldn't assume that you'll be able to get the music from that artist or that band or group or whatever. Sometimes that's really difficult, near impossible to achieve. It takes a lot more money and person power than you could ever imagine. Three, I'm going for that verite effect. I don't want music in there. I don't want music to make my story fake. I don't want it to be phony. This is a documentary. This is the real thing. Well, let's face it. You're recording and you're filming people, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know what your story is going to be. And so you're artificially putting together a story from what you have. You're probably adding footage that might be stock footage, that might, you're putting in B-roll. You're assembling something that isn't really truthful. So that whole verite thing, it's not true. There's really no such thing as verite. It's a style, but it's really not so. The other thing is that music is so prevalent. It often feels false to not have music in a documentary. So the verite, look, it's your film. but it's not really a good reason. So rethink that. Number 4, we don't have the budget for a score. Not true. Whatever your budget is, there's a composer who will work in that budget. It's how it is. That's how the entertainment business is. There are people that make millions of dollars for a project, and there are people that make thousands of dollars for a project, and there are people that make even less. So whatever your project is, there's a composer. It's a lot less money, it's a lot less time, a lot less effort than trying to license songs. It makes sense to have someone who can bring out the subtleties, because when you use music libraries, and I'm going to do a whole thing on music libraries. Music libraries are great. They have so many fantastic uses. And the problem is that when you go to these sources, the music is often a little too dense, a little too overproduced for effective use in film. And that can be a problem where a composer just writes something that's sparse, writes something that easily starts and ends in the right spot. The other thing about documentaries is that documentaries are a wonderful place to insert incredible creativity on the side of music. Things that can make the film overall more interesting, give it something more to talk about. It gives it another dimension, another layer, another voice telling the story from a different angle. So, besides the other reasons of unifying, creating transitions, making it seem like a conscious expression from the beginning. Because remember, we're pulling from the footage we have available, we're adding B roll, maybe we're adding a narrator, maybe we're adding some extra talking heads. Maybe that's the conception all along. But remember, we're assembling all of these different things from different sources to create a documentary. It's very rare that we just document our subject or subjects and let them do their thing. Okay, to recap, the top 4 misconceptions about music and documentaries. It's a documentary. It doesn't need music. I'm going to have natural sound, and I'm going to have some sound design. It'll be great. You need music for transitions, to bring out subtle emotions. You need it. 2, my documentary is about a musician. I don't need any other music. Well, you may not get the music that artist created, and or that artist's catalog may not have the range of emotion and probably darkness or subtlety that you need to really get your point across. 3, going for that verite feel. No such thing as verite. It's really not true. You're totally constructing something out of all the parts you get. You're not really verite truth telling in your documentary. But I understand what you mean. And lastly, I can't afford a score. You can't afford to not have a score, because you're going to need music. And when you try to license all the songs or all the pieces you need, it's going to actually be a lot more complicated than having someone come in there and write things that are perfectly tailored. The audience will never know that your temp music was different than what's in there now. So thank you for joining me in Film Music Mentor. I'll see you next time.